Hello leaders, Patrick Jinks here, leadership and strategy coach and president of the Jinks Perspective. We're continuing our interview series on leading a nonprofit through times of crisis, and we have another extraordinary guest this week, so don't go anywhere. Let's cue it up. For the past few weeks, we've been highlighting a blog post that several of us collaborated on recently to help nonprofits think through this COVID-19 crisis through a leadership lens. This week, one of those authors joins us on the channel. Cayci Banks is Vice President of Strategy and Communication for a nonprofit consulting firm here in Columbia, South Carolina called 1,000 Feathers, whose founder, Forrest Alton, we had on the show last week. Cayci is an award-winning communication expert, and I'm going to let you read her full bio for yourself. In fact, I've posted a link to that in the video description below this video. But among her many talents is her ability to turn data and sector speak into compelling stories that move people to action. Earlier this week, Cayci joined me via Zoom, of course, to take us just a bit deeper into the section of the article we referenced on the critical role of communication during a crisis. Here's our conversation.
Cayci, thank you so much for carving out time for us. I've been really excited about this. You worked, I think, a miracle with the original blog that we put out. By the way, for folks that don't know how that got put together, let me just say it since we have an audience here. I think it was your suggestion, Cayci, is how we did this. So Forrest Alton, who our viewers saw last week, Charles Weathers with the Weathers Group, Tom Klaus, and I decided we needed to get together and sort of kind of put our thoughts together. And, the first thing Forrest says is, we have Cayci, like, she's amazing at this. And great. That's a fifth author. We need it. So not only were you a co-author in it, but you facilitated the conversation that drew out all the content, and then you went and wrote it and made it look good and make us sound better than we did. So thank you for that. And I'm also going to put your follow-up blog post in the video description below this video, because I thought your follow-up about self-care was just so spot on. So I won't take time with our viewers right now to go through it, but I'm going to put a link to that in the video description below. I think it was amazing. So thank you for all that you're doing, not only for your own clients and your family and all of that, but for doing this for us and helping us get this word out. I just want to thank you for it.
Yeah,
first of all,
no
and
problem.
welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
So one of the things that excites me about having you here, obviously, is that you are a communication expert. And sometimes we all think we are, but you actually do understand the principles and have great practices. And you're a practitioner yourself for 1,000 Feathers. You were with the Campaign to End Teen Pregnancy before that and did an amazing job. They have incredible results, due in large part to the effective communication that they had. One of the 5 components that we put out in the blog was about communication and how important it was internally and externally for nonprofits to really get communication right now, or at least think about it. So let me just give you a general question. In a crisis in general, what are sort of 2 or 3 things that are the top tips to remember for communication when you're in a crisis and you're an organizational leader?
Sure. I think that's a great question, and one that a lot of organizations are struggling with right now. So it's very timely and relevant that we're talking about this. But I think there are 3, here's 3, if you want 3, here's 3 really good tips, I think, that all organizations should be thinking about right now. And one is to share what you know when you know it. You don't have to have the full story before you start telling the story. Because if you're an organization who is scared to get out in front of an issue, and oftentimes, a crisis is hitting us in ways we didn't expect. But if you're waiting and you're scared to get out and start talking about it, others are going to fill that void. We see this happen on Twitter all the time, right? I mean, if people are not getting the information they need, they start getting it from other sources. And especially in the days of Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms, the story is going to be told. The question is, are you the one that wants to be telling the story? And so don't let other people take over that narrative for you. Be willing to get out in front of the messages and tell the story before others get in, and don't do your story justice.
Even if the message is not all wonderful, peachy, great news, path forward kind of stuff, just the fact that you're saying what you know, even if what you know is I don't know.
Exactly. If the answer is we don't know, then you need to let your constituents, your clients, your employees know that. You need to let them know what you know when you know it, and don't hold on to information until you have the whole story to tell them. Tell them little pieces at a time to keep them well communicated with. And that will ease fear. That eases anxiety the more open and honest we're being during a crisis. Because what really breeds fear and anxiety is the unknown and the uncertainties that we're all scared of. So if people are being communicated with regularly, they are less likely to feel that way. So we need to be sharing what we know when we know it.
Great tip. Love it.
Yeah. So another tip I would say is that we need to choose our spokespeople wisely. And I say spokespeople because I don't think it's always the same person. I do a lot of media training, and I encourage organizations and companies to train more than just one person, because it isn't always your president or CEO that is the one that you're going to put on camera. It depends on what the crisis is. And depending on what the crisis is, you want to put the most knowledgeable person on camera. Particularly during a crisis, you need someone who can calm people's nerves, who can handle pressure, because you're going to get tough questions. You're going to be put on the spot. So you need somebody that can handle that pressure, that can really calm people's nerves in the midst of a storm. And someone who can provide information in a way that, again, is going to try to relieve that fear and anxiety, not build more of it. So choose those spokespeople wisely and be sure that they have been media trained well in advance of a crisis hitting. So the only time we think about a crisis should not be in the midst of a crisis. We need to be thinking about crises well in advance so that we prepare our organizations and our companies for when they do hit. So
I think a lot of organizations are going to be thinking about that truth from now on. That the sort of the next time we want to be better prepared. I would think that one of the key things in terms of having multiple spokespeople is making sure that everybody is on the same page, that there are some universal messages and language that, we don't want one person to say one thing and another person to literally counter the other person. I think we're actually seeing some of that. That seems like a big key to me. Is that a part of your training that you do?
Of course, consistency is key, right? Everyone has to be on the same page. Before you go on camera, if there are going to be multiple ones of you, you should have briefed one another ahead of time so that everyone is speaking the same language. Because if you come on camera and one person from your organization is saying one thing, another person is contradicting that person, again, what we're trying to alleviate is fear and anxiety during the midst of a crisis. So when that's happening and you're getting multiple messages from an organization, that is going to breed that fear. Mm-hmm. And wait, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I'm unsure, I'm uncertain. And that's what we want to try to avoid during the middle of a crisis. So yes, I think consistency is key, and consistent messaging during a crisis is very, very important.
Excellent.
So then a third tip I think I would give is to ask questions and to make sure that you are being upfront and honest with your employees, with your constituents, with your clients, with your stakeholders. But it's not just a one-way street here, right? Communication doesn't just mean to be, I'm pushing my agenda, I'm pushing this on you, but really opening up lines of communication and hearing from those that you're serving, hearing from those you're working with. What are their fears? What are their concerns? What are their successes? And be able to share those with others. During the midst of a crisis, what are you doing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And then being able to share that with others, I think, is important. So not just continuing to push our own agenda, but really opening up and making communication be a two-way street.
Boy, those are great. Those are all three things that should be principles in normal times. Now that I think about them, but I think that we have to pay extra attention to them during a time like this. In our blog post, we talked about internal communication and external communication. You're kind of covering a little bit of both right now. You mentioned, be forthright with your staff and things like that. Probably my last question for you is about the external communication. What guidance do you give your clients, or would you share with nonprofits right now about external communication? There is lots of noise out there right now. Fundraising online and donate here and come volunteer here, and we're here for you. I think during the first week of this COVID-19, we were all joking about our inboxes being flooded with every vendor we use was giving us their COVID-19 policies. But now nonprofits in particular are trying to communicate with donors and stakeholders and clients and funders about what they're doing and events and things like this. How do you get past the noise, cut through the noise? Is now the time to even be trying to do that? What's your guidance on external communication right now?
I think you're absolutely right that there is a lot of noise out there right now. And I think as nonprofits and organizations and companies, everybody that's thinking through their messaging right now, we have to be careful so that we don't look tone deaf, so that we don't look like we aren't in the midst of a crisis when everyone else is. Throughout the course of the last 3 weeks, every time I get an email from a company or an organization that is touting their upcoming conference or talking about something totally unrelated to what everyone in the world is going through right now, I've even stopped and thought to myself, oh, just this isn't the right timing. And I think people are seeing that and we're going to pay attention to that. So you risk really coming out and looking like you're not paying attention to what's going on in the world. I would suggest to clients and to nonprofits that they're trying to be a part of the conversation instead of just being a part of the noise. How can we in this space really contribute to the conversation? How can we be helpers? There are some organizations out there right now who are literally in the trenches. And their work right now is more important than it's ever been. And then there are some nonprofits whose work, yes, is of course still vital and important, but they're not exactly as in the trenches as their colleagues. So how can we be helping one another? How can we be adding to conversations instead of just adding extra noise out there that people really just don't have the time to listen to right now? I think fundraising is an important piece of this because as someone who used to do fundraising for a nonprofit, I know the intricacies of your fundraising plan, and you have deadlines you need to meet and you've got numbers you need to make. But in the midst of this crisis, it's probably not the time to be pushing out those emails that you had planned 6 months ago. You really have to ask yourself, are they still relevant? Is this still significant enough in this moment to be sending this? And really doing some deep thinking internally before you hit that send button.
Boy, these are great, Cayci. These are things we just all need all the time. So timely. Thank you for it. Let me just ask you one more question, and that is, do you have anything else you'd like to share or say, or kind of guidance you'd like to give us all during this time that my questions didn't give you a chance to say or talk about? Anything
else? I would say I don't feel like in a crisis you can over communicate. We're working with a client right now who has a network of providers all across the state of North Carolina. And they have nearly 100 executive directors that they're working with. And they are bringing those executive directors together twice per week during the midst of this crisis because they are an organization, as we just mentioned a minute ago, that's in the trenches. But they're bringing them together twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays over Zoom. There was nearly 115 people on the call today just to be able to ask questions, to talk about updates, to learn from one another, to share successes. What are you doing in your community that I might be able to also do in mine and replicate in mine so that I don't have to start from scratch? We need that kind of open lines of communication right now more than ever. We're also all at home alone, and I think longing for interaction and personal contact. So I don't feel like right now that you can over communicate too much. As also a college professor right now who is trying to stay in touch with students virtually, I've learned that I can't over communicate with them because they need those extra touches now that we're not seeing one another in person. They need that extra outreach to be sure that they're fulfilling their assignments. And just like my students need that, I think we need that in the nonprofit world as well. And leaders really need to be paying attention to how much they're communicating with their staff, with their clients, with their constituents.
You know what I love about that is that so there's, to me, I heard two parts in what you said. The message can't be over communicated because we do need to hear it over and over and over because there is a lot of noise. But the thing I got most out of it was the second piece, which is we just psychologically need the connection and emotionally need the connection. So sometimes the communication doesn't even have to have a super big epiphany message or anything like that. It's just the matter of staying connected, and almost the connectivity is almost synonymous with the communication.
Yeah, I think it's super important right now. I mean, I have 4 children, so I am not alone in my house. But, for people who are living alone or, are feeling kind of isolated from others, and I think we all are feeling a little isolated. Yes, I have my children here, but haven't seen my friends, can't be around my parents. We have like this isolation that we're feeling right now. And so to be able to bring people together and allow them an opportunity to communicate with one another, I think is really important.
Man, this is such good stuff. I wish we had more time. I'll try to keep these short so people will stay tuned in long enough. But thank you, Cayci, so much again for everything, for all your contribution and pulling together what we put out to the nonprofit sector last week, and for helping to follow up by digging a little bit deeper into each area. Couldn't have picked a better person to do that. So thank you. And I am going to direct our audience to the video description below this video, because not only is the link to 1,000 Feathers there, but the link to your follow-up blog as well. So thanks again, Cayci. I know we're going to stay in touch. I know Forrest and I have been talking about, let's not let this just be a one-time thing. Let's stay in touch with each other and see how collectively we continue to help each other and those that we're serving all the time. So thank you so much.
I agree. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. Stay safe. We'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Now you see why I invited Cayci to the show. She's the real deal. That's the Jinx Perspective for now. I do hope you'll check out the 1,000 Feathers website at the link in the video description below. We have another very special guest next week as well, so stay tuned. And as always, in the meantime, if you'd like to explore ways the Jinx Perspective can help you and your organization achieve greater clarity, simplicity, and alignment in your mission work, reach out and schedule a free discovery call with me by clicking the link that's also in the video description below. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to notify you when we drop new episodes. We'll see you here next week.